or subjective? Which one is it? If we say that morality is subjective, that means it can change. And if it can change, then what was moral before is not moral now, and what is moral now is not moral before. So then who decides what is moral? We have no criterion, which means that it's completely subjective to the person, which means I get to choose what I want to be moral, which means that in reality it's not moral, because morality entails that everybody agrees upon it, which means that we have to have a criterion to judge what is moral. And the only way for that to happen is if it's external to human beings. Us as human beings, we cannot decide. It has to be someone else to tell us. Why the only way for objective morality to exist, that entails that there has to be a creator that exists, and this creator has to be the one to actually tell you what is morally objective and what is morally correct. This is why the Quran is that object, is that thing that we use to judge al-haq wal-batil, to judge right and wrong. Very good? Al-Furqan, another reason why it's called Al-Furqan, the surah, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paints a picture or shows us what the characteristics are of the disbelievers and mukaththibin, the people who actually belied the Quran, they belied the message. And then He paints a picture and He shows us the characteristics of Ibadur Rahman, the worshippers of the Most Merciful, the people who actually submitted to the message. So this surah shows us both characteristics. It shows us the people who went astray, and it shows us the people who are actually rightly guided in the surah. Obviously, for our purposes, for this class, we're not going through the whole surah, but we will go over this last section, which is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fact does go over Ibadur Rahman. What are some of the general ideas that the surah discusses? If anybody knows it or has read it or has memorized it, what are some of the ideas that the surah has actually gone over? A few of the ideas are establishing the truthfulness of the Quran itself. So for example, they questioned the validity of the Quran and they said, وَقَالُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدًا. Why wasn't the Quran sent to him just in one go? Right? What did Allah answer them? كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. Such we did in order to what? نُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. We actually give you tathbeet. What's tathbeet? The Prophet was given tathbeet. What's tathbeet? He was strengthened, given steadfastness in order to, he was given a solid foothold so that way he can actually be firm upon the belief, which tells us that when we do things was given tathbeet. What's in small amounts, he was strengthened regularly, steadfast in order to, he was given a solid foothold so that way he can actually be firm upon the belief. Does that make sense? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by doing so, He's saying that the only way to be firm upon this path is by doing it in small amounts every single day. Okay? Instead of one big amount and then you're not regular. There's a huge difference. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he says, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The most beloved of deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most regular, even if they're small. And this is the only way for us to actually be firm upon our faith, is to do it every day. We don't just do it on Friday. There are some people who only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Friday. Is this correct? And they come to Jum'ah. That's a big deal. Jum'ah is a big deal. Right? There's a khutbah, there's all these things. But then the rest of the week, they're doing barely nothing. Which is better? Doing small amounts every day versus something one big but once a week? Obviously we know the answer. Small amounts every day. This is why salah itself small. Okay? And this is the anyways, so some of the ideas that it talks about the Quran. Then it talks about the Prophet himself. They said, why does Allah send us a human being? And then Allah says, even if we sent down an angel, we would have made him look like a human being, and we would have made him walk among the people, etc., etc. And if there were angels on the earth, Allah would have sent them an angel. But there's human beings on the earth, so Allah sent them a human being. So He's establishing, He's replying. Then they were lying, or they belied and denied resurrection. And Allah mentions to them ideas about resurrection, that it's actually very possible. All these ideas that they put forth, and then in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then He mentions, of course, what they were rejecting, what they were denying. Then there's the name of Allah Ar-Rahman that pops up very frequently in this surah, and that's why it's called Wa'ibadur Rahman. He doesn't say Wa'ibadullah. And next week we're going to talk about this name of Allah Ar-Rahman in detail. We're not going to talk about it today. But these are some of the themes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responding to all of these accusations that they're making about all of these aqidah beliefs that they don't want to believe. And after this, he's establishing why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are the characteristics of the people that actually should be worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to be discussing about 14 verses. The 15th verse is actually the very last verse of the surah that doesn't have a lot to do with our topic, but it's a good verse to reflect over as well. So about 14 verses, which means that we'll take it in about 14 weeks. Ibadur Rahman, is this the only place that they are described? In this name, yes. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the believers in many verses in the Quran, which is why we can cross-reference them. But with this name, Ibadur Rahman, this is the only place that they're mentioned with this name in the Quran, which makes it obviously that much more important. So Ibadur Rahman is made out of the word ibad, which is what? The plural of abd. What does abd mean? Servant, worshipper, slave. All of these are correct. Okay? What's the first commandment in the Quran? If you open the Mus'haf and you start reading, what's the first commandment that you'll find? If you open the Mus'haf. Are there any commands in Surah Al-Fatiha? Any commands? Awamir. If'al kada. Do this. No. There's not a single commandment in Surah Al-Fatiha. طيب, we continue. Surah Al-Baqarah, you'll read, you get to verse 24. What's verse 24? Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum. O mankind, worship your Lord. U'budu rabbakum. So u'budu means what? Worship him. But it has the word abd, which means be a slave as well. So u'bud doesn't only mean worship, but worship actually means to be a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to be discussing this. So here's the commandment. Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum walladhina min qablikum. He created you and He created the people before you. So the first attribute that Allah is mentioning about Himself and why He's deserving of worship is because He created us. Why does He deserve to be worshipped? He created us. This is number one. Obviously there's many reasons why Allah is deserving of our worship. But number one, most important, is that He created us, and that's why He's mentioning that right there. Number two is that He's our Rabb. That's why He says Rabbakum. He doesn't say, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budullah. This is very important as well. Why doesn't He say, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budullah? Because we don't know who Allah is unless we know Him as our Lord. We knew Him as our Lord before we knew Him as anything else. Our Lord is the one who took care of us, sustains us, loves us. He's a Lord over us. That means He's dominant, supreme, He's powerful. He's all able to do everything. His will penetrates everything. Nothing can stop His will from happening. He is the Lord, Ar-Rabb. Right? And this is why one of the greatest names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in fact Ar-Rabb. So this is some of the details about that. The word abd in the Quran frequently is used to describe who? It's to describe the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is described as abd in many cases. In fact, in the most honorable cases, he's mentioned as abd. And this is important for us as well. So for example, it says, Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. It doesn't say anzala ala Muhammad al-kitab. Right? It doesn't say anzala ala nabiy al-kitab. It says anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. So in the context of saying how He revealed the Quran, it says all praise is due to Allah, the one who revealed the book to His slave. And His slave here is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't say the Prophet by name. He didn't say him by him being the Prophet. He said His slave. Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi. He doesn't say bi Muhammad. Right? He says, glory be to one, or exalted is the one who, and then Allah mentions the miracle, that He allowed the Prophet to travel at night from Mecca to Medina. That miracle that happened, He doesn't say bi Muhammad. He says, asra bi abdihi, His slave. Okay? And then many other places. يوم الفرقان يوم التقى الجمعان. And He says, هو الذي أنزل السكينة على I'm sorry. The verse that talks about Battle of Badr, He also mentions على عبده, where He mentions that He sent down the victory in Nasr. It came down على عبده. In this surah, تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. In the very beginning, it says تبارك. Glory be to the one who revealed the Furqan to his servant, his slave. So obviously Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is referred to as a slave, which begs the question. And inshallah ta'ala we're going to dive deep into this, and I hope everybody is able to follow along inshallah ta'ala. If there's anything that's ambiguous or not clear, please just raise your hand, ask a question. It's not a problem inshallah. He says, the question is, how is being a slave of Allah a status of honor versus being a slave to an object or to a person? When we're a slave to a person, is that honorable? No. When we're a slave to an object, is that honorable? No. Like, what about being a slave to Allah? How is that honorable? Because we're saying the most honorable human being to ever live, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in the most honorable contexts was mentioned as a slave. So then obviously, we would assume that from a Quranic paradigm, according to the Quran itself, being a slave of Allah is actually honorable. Our question is, how? How is being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honorable? It's not an easy question to answer. So let's talk about some more details. Okay, this is the central question of today. Today's topic is, how is being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honorable? From a linguistic point of view, the word abd means to be humbled, humilified, lowered. When we say tariq in Arabic, tariq mu'abbad, what does that mean? It's a paved road. Tariq mu'abbad is a paved road. That means that the road before was wild, it was chaotic, it was out of control, and then we went and paved it and we brought it under control. So a slave, in essence, abd in this case, is someone who's brought under control. He submits to something else. In this case, we want to what? Submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to anything else. Because there's a difference. Do people submit to other people? Yes, they do. Even if they don't have the label of the slave, their actions show that they're submitting to someone else. Or they submit to another object. And in reality here, we're trying to get to the point where we submit not to another person or another object, but we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Question, what are the most beloved names to Allah? This is in a hadith in Sahih Muslim. What does it say? Ahabbul asma'i ilallah. Wa? Very good. That's what the hadith says. Ahabbul asma'i ilallah, Abdullah wa Abdul Rahman. The most beloved names to Allah are Abdullah and Abdul Rahman. Why? Very good. That's what the person should be. So when it's a beloved name, that means that hopefully the person will take upon that characteristic. Names have, and this is subhanAllah, this is a big question in psychology, which is, does your name have an effect on who you are? What do you guys think? Yes, 100%. Does your name have an effect on who you are? Yes, it does. And actually there's studies that have proven this point. Now, it has an effect on you, who you are, due to multiple things. One is that the name that your parents choose for you is indicative of who your parents are. What does this mean? So there's naming trends that happen in the world, and usually people who are ahead of the trend are usually also more educated, more wealthy, more established in their society, and they would give their names, their children names that actually are trendsetters. People then copy them afterwards, and then the trend ends. But then there's people who usually name their kids after the trend. And so there's now studies that can show you can give your name to a person, and when you were born, and they can roughly guess your parents' economical and social background here in America. Did you guys know this? They can do this. They can reverse reference this. Because they can tell you, well, this name was popular in this decade, but since you were born here, that means that your parents were generally poor. And you can be like, okay, yeah, that's actually true. And there's ways to do this because they reverse studied this. But this also indicates, so obviously, your name indicates your family's background, their wishes, their aspirations, all these things. But then it also has an effect on you yourself and how you view the world. Because you view it through that lens of your name. Your name is the first thing that people see a lot of times. It's how they interact with you. It's how you interact with the world. It's how you see yourself. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, did he change the names of certain people who came to him as Muslims? Yes, he did. Like who? Whose name did he change? From the seerah. If you guys remember, if it's okay if you don't remember, but there are people whose names were changed. There was a lady, she came, and her name, there was a family who came and they named their daughter Barra. You guys know the story? And he changed her name. He said, La. Because Barra means righteous. Al-Bar means a person who is righteous. Min al-Bir. بس البر هو الإنسان الذي عنده البر. So Barra is the female version of this. The Prophet changed it. Why? Because he says this might lead her to think that she actually is righteous without doing any actions. Righteousness is not because of your name, it's because of your actions. So claiming righteousness is actually forbidden in Islam. You can't walk around and say, yeah, I'm a very good person. As Muslims, can we do this? We can't. We can't walk around saying, yeah, I'm al-bar. La a'udhu billah. You can't say that. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, Bal samuha mada, samuha Zainab. Rather call her Zainab. What's Zainab? Anybody know? It's the name of a flower. It's a beautiful flower. It doesn't have that much of a smell, but it's a nice flower. طيب خلاص, Zainab. Okay. Men would come and they would have a name. A person's name is Harb or Sakhr. You know, these harsh names. No, and the Prophet ﷺ did change them. Or a person has a name that's actually incorrect. Abdul Shams. There was a Sahabi, his name was Abdul Shams, and in another narration it's Abdul Kaaba. Abdul Kaaba. He's the servant of the Kaaba, or the slave of the Kaaba. Right? Is that correct? Can a person be called Abdul Kaaba? No. Do we love the Kaaba? Yes, we do. But can I be called Abdul Kaaba? No. Same thing like Abdul Nabi. There's still people in a certain Arab country, unfortunately, they do call their children Abdul Nabi. Not knowing it's ignorance, but they call him this. What's Abdul Nabi? Servant of the Nabi. He's a worshipper of the Nabi. Obviously, we love the Nabi, but we don't worship him. So it's an incorrect name. So he changed his name. This person who was Abdul Kaaba or Abdul Shams, he changed his name to Abdul Rahman. And it's Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, radiallahu anhu. His name was changed. But anyways, going back, does the name have an effect? Yes. So when a person is named Abdullah, that means hopefully, he will exude and he will have the characteristics of a person who's Abdullah or Abdul Rahman. This is what we hope, right? That's our hope, inshallah ta'ala, always. So, the most, naam? Yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, yeah. 100%. So if a person has a name that Islamically speaking is okay, there's no need for them to change their name. If they want to change their name, no problem. They can do that. Okay? Changing your first name is not a problem in Islam. So, but it's never forced, unless their name is inherently un-Islamic. So if a lady came in, and this happened, lady came in and she wanted to accept Islam, her name is what? Trinity. So we told her, okay, that's fine. She accepts Islam afterwards, and then she obviously knows that Trinity is wrong. She changed her name. Okay, Sister Noor now. Mashi, that's fine. You understand what I'm saying? So in this case, obviously that's good. There was a brother who came in, and his name was Christian, and he accepted Islam, African American. He changed his name. Obviously, if his name is Christian, you know what I mean. That's a little problematic, right? So those cases, yes. Unfortunately, what happens is when people jump in and then they tell the person, oh brother, now that you accepted Islam, you must change your name. I will call you now Brother Omar. What? No, it doesn't work like this. You know what I mean? Now, if the person wants it, if the person embraces it, that's not a problem. I've actually talked to many people, especially in the African American community. What happens is for them, accepting Islam is, it's a very deep and emotional process, right? For many of them. And for many of them, in order to signify to everybody around them that they're serious about this, they change their name as well. And to show people that they're in fact Muslim. Does that make sense? So for them, it's an act of like passage, and it furthers their commitment to the faith. And in this case, I would totally encourage them to do that. I wouldn't say that there's a problem in this at all. But to say that it's a requirement, there's no proof for that. So it goes down to the individual. If the individual wants to change their name, because for many people, since they're embracing that change, they're like, I might as well even change my name. And in fact, a lot of people who do change their name, I would argue, actually persist upon the faith more so than people who don't. Because they're serious about it. It's a sign of seriousness. They're taking this 100% serious. They're not wavering. There's no going back. After you change your name, you have to kind of embrace it. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question. There's a discussion whether it's permissible to change your last name or not. What do you guys think? First name, not a problem. Can you change your last name? Why? Aywa? And what does Allah say about that? Naam? Aywa. وفي آية, there's a verse. Jazakallah khair, mashallah, mumtaz, good. So, there's a verse in the Quran that says, "Ud'uuhum li'abaihim huwa aqsatu 'inda Allah." Call them by their father's name. This is what's justice. This is talking about the orphans. Just because it's an orphan doesn't mean that it doesn't have an origin or doesn't have a family. It actually has a family. This is why the orphan retains their last name in Islam, because there is a family, there's a background, and that's not a problem. In fact, this is why, and because, so that's number one. Number two, al ansab, that there's a fear of mixing your lineage and your genealogy due to neglecting your family name. Not knowing your family and origin leads to the mixing of and it could lead to other problems as well. And this is why it's always recommended to keep your last name. And this is why even in Islam, women do not take on the last name of their husbands. They keep their own last name, right? But the children take the name of their father. So that makes sense. A'udhu billah, not knowing your last name or who your father is a huge problem. There was a news article that came out a few months ago. I don't know if you guys saw this. I'll just mention this is a side story. Small town somewhere, I believe in either Oklahoma or Texas. Small town. A guy and a girl were dating for about a year and a half. And they decided to buy a DNA kit, for Christmas. This last Christmas that came, as a Christmas gift to each other. So they both took the test, they bought the thing, and they were excited. And the guy, he says, I opened it up, the results, and it shows like his background, little English ancestry, German, Irish, all these things are both white. And then it says, closest relative, and it says the name of his girlfriend, half-sister. And he says, the first thought in my mind was, oh, this is a funny joke. You know what I mean? Haha, good one. You know what I mean? You got me. This is a good prank. And she's kind of confused. She's like, okay, I don't know. Sure. She's going along with it, not really understanding what's going on. She's thinking maybe he's pranking her. So she opens her results. Same thing, it shows her background, all these other things. And it says closest relative, and then it names him, half-brother. Now at this point, they're both like looking at this like, no, this can't be right. There has to be some sort of confusion, kaza. They go, they contact both of their mothers, because it turns out, they ask, do you know who your father is? I have no idea who my father is. The one lady, she says, I thought my stepdad was my father. The guy, he says, I don't know who my father is. But the lady, she has a stepdad. She always thought it was her stepdad. طيب. The girl goes back to her mother, asks her mother, who's my father? And isn't my stepdad or whatever? And she's like, no. I had you before I married this guy, and I really wanted a child at that time, so I just went to a sperm bank, and they gave me donated sperm. And the guy, when he went to his mother, he asked, okay, who's my father? He never told me about him. And she's like, to be honest, I never met him. I just went to a sperm bank as well. After doing research in this small town, now it's a small town in Oklahoma or whatever it was, small town, it ends up this one donor fathered at least 30 people in this small town. And it all happened roughly around the same time. And when they went to it in this one high school, all of them went to the same high school, and it turns out that there were at least dozens of cases where multiple siblings were actually dating at one point and on the verge of marriage. Because they were all from donated sperm. And then we wonder why Islam says, la, you have to protect the lineage, you can't do this, because otherwise it becomes a mess. So after this, when they found out that this truly was the case, that he was dating, he said, she's the love of my life, I wanted to marry her, she's the only person that I ever got along with. And it turns out he got along with her because she's in fact his sister, not because of anything else. He wanted to kill himself after a while. He said, I contemplated suicide. I wanted to kill myself because I was disgusted with myself. I was dating my sister, and I did so many things with her that nobody should ever do with his sister. And then because of this, and now not knowing his origin, and the fact that he was donated like this in a place, and he's just completely disgusted with himself, he wanted to kill him. He was on suicide watch. He had a mental breakdown. The girl, same thing, problems. This is why we say, Alhamdulillah ala ni'mat al-Islam. Alhamdulillah that Islam has blessed us and we don't have a problem like this to deal with. Okay. Anyway, this is a side story that Islam, Allah, alhamdulillah, protects us from problems like this. طيب. This is some poetry that we will try to attempt by Al-Qadi Iyad As-Subti. It says, وَمِمَّا زَادَنِي شَرَفًا وَعِزًّا وَكِدْتُ بِأُخْمُصِي أَطْأَ الثُّرَيَّا دخولي تحت قولك يا عبادي وأن صيرت أحمد لي نبيا. And this has been narrated in a few different versions. He says, and what has increased me in my honor and in the glory that I have, and that وَكِدْتُ بِأُخْمُصِي, أُخْمُصِي is باطن القدم. It's the inside of the foot. I almost touched the stars with it. Meaning I was walking on stars. I was so elated and so high and so proud of myself. دخولي تحت قولك يا عبادي. Me being a part of the people who you call Ya Ibadi, O my servants. And that you sent to me Ahmad as my prophet. Obviously this is a huge honor for us as well. Okay? Being a slave, abd. So in this case, being a servant, we shouldn't think of it as we're doing Allah a service. This is not how it is. In fact, it's Allah honoring us by selecting us for it. It's not the other way around. Remember, there were people, it's not a favor that we do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's Allah selecting us because He's honoring us with this title. It's not a derogatory term. So when we use the word slave in the context of Allah, in fact, it's not derogatory, it's actually honorable. And we'll get into why, inshallah ta'ala, it's very honorable. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to those who claim to do a favor to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by accepting Islam? Allah mentions in the Quran, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. They show you a favor that they have accepted Islam. A group of Arab, a group of Bedouins, when they came to the Prophet ﷺ, they did what? They said, oh, we're Muslim now, you need to do this, you need to... And it's as if they were acting like they did the Prophet ﷺ a favor. What did Allah say in Surah Al-Hujurat? بَلِ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكُمْ أَنْ هَدَاكُمْ لِلْإِيمَانِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Rather, it is Allah who has the favor upon you, that He guided you to Iman, He guided you to faith, if you're truly truthful. The reality is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who selects us, He's the one who guides us. It's not the other way around. How does being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entail immense love for Allah? Can we be slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without loving Allah first? We can't. Because it will be very difficult, and in fact will stop. And this is why the essence of all worship is love, and love has to be there. If there's no love, it won't last. And love itself has to be built. Love has to come from knowing what it is that you love, learning more about it, understanding who it is that you love truly, understanding the nature of the relationship, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one who initiated love to us by creating us, protecting us, providing for us, sustaining us, doing all these things for us. Man, it was amazing, subhanAllah. I was watching one of these nature documentaries. I like to watch documentaries, a lot of them. Because, you get a lot of information, very small amount of time, it's nice. And one documentary was making the claim that if Jupiter, the planet, everybody knows Jupiter, the planet, you've heard of it before? Jupiter did not exist, life on earth would not exist. Did anybody know this before? Jupiter, the planet, we just see it in the sky and we look at it, oh, pretty cool. Right? We don't even think about it. But they were making the claim, the argument, and it's a true, valid argument, that if Jupiter did not exist where it exists, life on earth could not exist. Jupiter is so big that it exerts a gravitational pull on the rest of the planets. If Jupiter wasn't there, the planets would be pulling closer to the earth and Earth would be much hotter, number one. Number two, because of how big Jupiter is, it actually sucks all the dangerous meteors towards it. And then if it did not exist, a lot of meteors would have slammed into the earth time after time after time, ending life as we know it. But instead, it only happens once every few millions of years, and it does not end all life. Because we know that what ended the dinosaurs was one of these meteors. And then before this, there was another grand extinction. There's been about 6 different, according to the documentary, 6 extinction phases. Right now we're in a phase, but it's human caused. It's not caused by a meteor. But all of these would have been more frequent if Jupiter did not exist to actually be a magnet to attract them more so than Shismo. These are just 2 examples of why its place is necessary. And here, we're here on Earth, we're not even thinking about another planet providing us help. And then, subhanAllah, after hearing this, and then the same person might say, oh yeah, everything was random though. There was no design in this. There's no creator or sustainer who actually provided. It just happened. It just happened by a chance, random. Right? Anyways, alhamdulillah, Islam offers us, we see, no, this is clearly by design. There's no chance in this. طيب, if we understand truly that Allah loves us and provides for us every day and protects us every day and does things that we don't even think about, we don't even know, and we're slowly discovering how much truly Allah took care of us, for us to be able to be here and breathe and function and to be conscious and aware and to ask these big questions about who we are, where we're going, the purpose of life, who's our creator, what will happen after we die, these big questions. Obviously it helps us understand truly that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does love us, which means that we should love Him back. Okay? Question: what is the most beloved thing to the typical human being? And can we say that that's what they worship? Does love equal worship? This is a question. Food? I don't know. I'm asking. There's no answer. I don't have an answer for this. Some people eat food and then they're sick of food. Once they get full, it's like, oh, I don't want to look at it. Khalas, move it away from me. I don't want to smell it. Oh, I can't handle it anymore. So yeah, you love it before, but then you hate it afterwards. Money and nafs, the self, money, desires, right? Status, whatever. There's a lot of things that people love. Does that mean that they worship those things? Could be. But they don't worship it in the traditional sense. What do we mean by this? Like if a person worships money, right? He doesn't put the money and then he says, money akbar, alhamdulillah money or whatever, He doesn't say that. He's not worshipping it like this, right? It's not like ibadah like in traditional sense. But it's ibadah where? In the love. So is love an act of worship? How? Yes, it is. It's correct. How? Aywa? In our actions. If you love something, good job. But here's another question, because he brought it up. Good job. He brought up an important question. Is love an emotion or an action? Is it both? And if a person says, I love you, mom, does he have to show it? Or can he just say, I love you, mom? And then mom is like, no, you don't. You don't listen to me. You don't clean your room. You don't do your homework. You don't call me. You don't text me. You don't this. You don't this. When I tell you to come, you don't spend time with me. You ignore me. You're disrespectful to me. You yell at me. You raise your voice. So when the person says, I love you, mom, what's the mom thinking? You don't. You might love me, but you love so many things before me. Right? Or when a husband tells his wife, I love you, honey. But you never buy me any gifts. You never take me anywhere nice. You know, you never come and help me. Say, Wallah, you know, Habib, you've been working hard. Let me take this and do it for you. These are all things that the Prophet, by the way, did. Right? He كان يخدم في البيت. He used to help out in the house. He used to relieve Aisha. He used to, you know, console her, give her gifts, talk to her, tell her nice words. Wallah, some spouses don't even tell their spouse nice words. Some wives, they come and they're like, Sheikh, I never heard a nice word from my husband. But then the husband says, oh, I love her. Does he really love her? You guys understand where we're going with this? So love is not just an emotion, it's an action. You have to prove it. Because if there's no proof, then there's no love. Like they say, the proof is in the pudding. There's no proof for any love that a person claims. You know, I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again, like a person who says, you know, you ask him, what's your favorite dessert? What's your favorite dessert, guys? Cheesecake. طيب. When was the last time you had cheesecake? A month ago. Whoa. If that's your favorite dessert and you had it a month ago, is it really your favorite dessert? A person whose favorite dessert is cheesecake, would he be eating cheesecake almost every day? Would he have cheesecake in his fridge? He would have cheesecake he'd be going to the cheesecake factory, you know, he'd be like, you know, he's a connoisseur, he's like, you know, this one, and I have this, and he knows a lot about cheese. You guys get what we're saying here. But if a person says, yeah, the last time I had cheesecake was last year, we're like, that's kind of, I don't think that's your favorite dessert. That's just a claim. And in Islam, we don't take claims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept claims. Okay? It has to be proven with action. طيب. Being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entails that we also love Allah more than anything else. This is why there are a lot of things that people love and that they might actually, because of that love, worship. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ say about the worshipper of money? Ta'isa abdul dirham, ta'isa abdul dinar. Ta'isa, may he be ruined. The abd, the slave of the dirham, the slave of the dinar, the slave of the dollar. Do we have slaves of dollars? When they're a slave of the dollar, what does that mean? Yeah, they do everything for the dollar. They bend over for the dollar, and in the sense that they're like, you know, I love the dollar. I'll do anything for a dollar. There are people, whatever amount, they're willing to do anything. They'll sell out their brother. Their Muslim brother, and sometimes their biological brother. They will cheat, they will lie, they will steal, they will do whatever to get the dollar. Correct? We know this. These are facts that we have to face, and these are realities. This is why the Prophet ﷺ saying, Ta'isa abdul dinar, ta'isa abdul dirham. And it says, Ta'isa abdul qatifa. Qatifa is like a piece of cloth that people used to sell. But he's abd of it still, because it's a material thing that he used to buy. Let's look at this verse. And then we have a quote by Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. So this verse is in Surah At-Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. This is the verse. Say, if your parents, your children, your siblings, your spouses, your ashira. Ashira is your people, your families, but your people, your tribe. And wealth that you have gathered. And businesses that you fear you should lose in them. Meaning you have a business, you built it, and you don't want to lose this business. You don't want it to go bankrupt. You don't want it to go out of business. وَمَسَاكِنُ تَرْضَوْنَهَا, and homes that you love, homes that you're pleased with. Not just a regular home, but a home that you love. If all of these 8 things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving for His sake, فَتَرَبَّصُوا, it says, then wait. Question. These 8 things that Allah is mentioning that people love, are they halal or haram? They're all halal. So then what's the problem? Why can't we love them? Very good. Somebody's paying attention. It didn't say you can't love them, but it says what? You can't love them more than Allah and His Messenger and striving for His sake. So the reflection that we have to do is, do we love these things more than Allah and His Messenger? And this is everybody's honest conversation that they have to do with themselves. Do we love these things more? Do we love our parents? We do love our parents. Our children, we love them for sure. Do we love our spouses, our siblings, our people, our homes, our businesses, our careers, the wealth that we have? Of course, we love all these things, but we can never love them more. Notice how he says فَتَرَبَّصُوا. He doesn't mention what the punishment is. What does فَتَرَبَّصُوا mean? Wait. Wait for what? فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِي اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ, until Allah brings about His command. Or wait for Allah is going to send you a punishment. He's going to send you a wake-up call. Of course, a lot of us here are older, but everybody remembers when their parents, when we used to get in trouble when we were younger, and your parent didn't tell you, I'm going to beat you. He just said, just wait for me. Just wait. Correct? Everybody remember this? Everybody knows this? Is that worse? Wallah, in a lot of ways, I remember this was worse. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. He's just like, just wait. Wait until I get home. Oh man, you're sitting there waiting and you don't even know. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَرَبَّصُوا, He's saying wait. Because He doesn't want you to know what's going to come. Which means the punishment, if you loved any one of those 8, it's going to be different according to each one of the 8. And it's going to be a wake-up call for you to come back. How does the wake-up call happen? Look at this quote by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. He says, مَنْ أَحَبَّ شَيْئًا. I'm going to read it in Arabic. This is the English. It says, مَنْ أَحَبَّ شَيْئًا إِلَّا اللَّهُ عُذِّبَ بِهِ وَلَا بُدْ. Whoever loves something besides Allah or more than Allah, he will be tormented by that thing which he loves. And it's a must. It has to happen. لا لا هذا ابن القيم يقول هكذا. لكن هي من تبعات هذه الآية. في تفسيره للآية يقول هذا. Okay? Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says. Now think about it. In a practical sense, we know this. Think about a person who loves money. He starts out his career, all he can think about is, I'm going to make a lot of money, and I'm going to spend this money, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. But eventually what happens? The money keeps him up at night. He's lying down on his bed, and all he can think about is his business and his money, and how he's going to pay this, and he owes this, and what he's going to do tomorrow, and he's afraid this business deal might not go through, and then what's going to happen? Now he can't sleep. Now all he thinks about is this, and now whenever he thinks about money, does it bring him pleasure or stress? Stress. Now the same money that he used to love is now a source of torment and punishment. This is why Ibn al-Qayyim, he says this, عُذِّبَ بِهِ وَلَا بُدْ. Or a person who loves their spouse more than they love Allah. A woman. Think about a guy, especially like in the beginning of the relationship. In the beginning of the relationship, when a person is first engaged, let's say khatib, right? What happens to a person who's engaged? All he thinks about is what? His khatiba, his engaged. Hopefully we're talking about halal love. I'm not talking about a person who has a girlfriend, whatever, you know what I mean? Inshallah ta'ala, we're assuming good. But even then, all he can think about is his what? Is his beloved. Habibtu. You know, the lady that he loves. But guess what? Eventually, that love turns into what? He's tormented by that same love. Oh, she says no. Imagine if she says no after a while. She says, oh, no, I'm calling it off. Why? You can't. I love you so much. You can't do this to me. And now he's tormented by that thing which he loves the most. That same person, after being a source of pleasure, is now a source of pain and heartbreak. This is why Allah forbids illicit relationships. This is why having a girlfriend is haram in Islam. Because there's no incentive for her to stay. She can leave at any time. He can leave at any time. If a person wakes up in the morning and he says, oh, I don't want this girlfriend anymore, he leaves. And she loves him more than anything else in the world. But because there's no actual legal contract binding them together, khalas, he can leave and move to greener pastures. And now her heart broken. And then she has another heartbreak. Another heartbreak. Eventually what happens to her heart? Is it soft anymore? Or is it very hard? Why do we see people now, especially when they used to have dating before marriage? In marriage, they say my marriage is actually not that good. Why? One of the biggest problems in why people's marriages aren't that good is because of the background that they approached, and because they have so much scarring on their heart. We're talking about emotional scarring, that they cannot embrace love fully anymore, and they can't love fully. So they're always guarded, and they're never fully loving because of what they experienced before. This is why if a person goes that route, it's very hard for them to come back in, and they have to solve it. This is one of many wisdoms in why dating before marriage is not allowed in Islam. Okay? So Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, "Man ahabba shay'an," he says, whoever loves something more than Allah, he will be tormented by that which he loves. طيب. We have this concept. Freedom, true freedom, comes when we are not slaves of anything or even slaves of ourselves. It's when we're only slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reality is everybody is a slave of something. Correct? Everybody is a slave of something. Some people are slaves of status, recognition, slaves of their desires, slaves of money, slaves of possessions, and there are people who are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only can we be free once we're actually slaves of Allah. How do we know this? What about things that we need for our life? Are we slaves of those things even? Let's say, for example, a person says, okay, I'm not going to be a slave for anything that I don't need. But I need food, I need water, I need air. Am I a slave for those things? Why? How? How can we not be slaves of these things? We need it, but how can we not be slaves of them, even though we need them? You know, there's people, for example, there's a statement that says, oh, I can't live without blank. I can't live without this thing. In essence, what is he saying? Is he a slave of that thing? In a way, yeah. And this can be problematic. Okay. Obviously, can we live without food? No, we can't. Can we live without water, without air? But are we slaves of these things? No. How does Islam make sure that we're not slaves of those things? One simple act of worship, which is fasting. Fasting makes it so that you, for at least a month out of the year, you're in control and not food. You're in control and not water. To train you for the rest of the year so that you're not a slave for those things as well. Every time I'm hungry, I just go and eat. Imagine what happens to us if every time I crave even a certain food, I go and eat it. What happens to me? Will I have problems, health problems, become overweight? You have no self-control, no self-discipline. Anybody who doesn't have discipline in their lives, aslan can't be successful. Every successful person on the planet has an element of self-control and self-discipline. That's how they became successful. So Allah is telling you, if you want success, you cannot be a slave for any of these things. You have to be the one who's in control. Yes, you go and you eat. Yes, you go and you drink. That's fine. But it's when you know that it's appropriate, not when the food or the drink. Obviously, food and drink doesn't call you, it's your desires that do this. This is why Islam elevates us above them, so that we're not a slave to these things. This is one of the wisdoms in Siyam. It elevates us from being a slave to those things to where we become a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means I go and eat when Allah tells me, not when the food tells me. When does Allah tell me to eat? Maghrib time, that's when I'm going to eat. So now in fasting, I'm a slave to who? To Allah. Do you guys get this? Is this clear inshallah ta'ala? I'm a slave to Allah Because when He tells me to eat, I eat. And when He tells me to stop, I stop. Fajr time, I stop. Khalas. Now I'm a slave to Allah. And that's perfect. Because in doing so, Allah elevates you. And you actually become a master over this entire dunya. When you become a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you master the dunya. This is why the Sahaba, the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, when they were proper slaves of Allah, Allah made them masters of the world. And they became the kings over the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire and over the entire known world at the time. When they were proper slaves of Allah, they became masters of the world. Masters of money, masters of best places to live, masters of everything in the dunya. Correct? Is this true? This is true. Umar, radiallahu anhu, within his lifetime, he saw so much treasures brought, he couldn't believe it. But he knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was opening up a door. It was a test. But at the same time that He made him the master over these things once he was a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Because of this, we have this concept. Being a slave of Allah is the only path to proper freedom, true freedom. Otherwise, think about this. Every non-Muslim out there is a slave to something. What are they a slave to? You know, I've had this conversation with many people who are non-Muslims. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll make adhan in a few minutes. After, I think we only have 10 more minutes left. There was a non-Muslim who came and he wanted to sign a paper to become Muslim. He said, I just want to sign a paper. I want to marry this girl. Her name is Fatima. And I want to sign this paper and get it over with so we can get married. I was like, okay, but are you Muslim? He's like, no. Do you want to become Muslim? Yes. Do you know anything about Islam? Or do you agree with Islam? He's like, no, I don't really agree with it. طيب, why do you want to sign the paper? He's like, just because of the marriage. He's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm not going to give you the paper. You're telling me that you don't agree with it. I'm not going to do this. This isn't a game. He was like, okay. I said, what do you know about Islam? He's like, I know you guys like fast in Ramadan. Because, when I was with Fatima, she wouldn't eat, but I would try to force her to eat, but she wouldn't. I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, okay. We pray 5 times a day. Oh, okay. He said, I don't think Fatima prays. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. طيب. So I said, what religion are you right now? He says, I don't really have a religion. I said, no, you have a religion, you just don't know what it is. Who do you worship? So I asked him, who do you worship? He's like, what? He's like, yeah, you worship something. I don't know. He's like, okay, what's the thing that you love the most? You think about the most, you focus everything on. He said, I worship, if that's worship, then right now it's Fatima. I worship Fatima. I said, okay, fine. Let's say you worship Fatima now. But what's going to happen when Fatima dumps you? How old are you? And he said, I'm 37. And Fatima was like 23. Wallahi, they were in college. He was one of those people who keeps on staying in college. And anyways, I said, so what happens when Fatima leaves you? Just like, I'm sure there were many other girls before, and you probably worship them. He's like, yeah. You're right. So what then? He's like, I guess I didn't love them. So then what did you love? He's like, I guess I loved the idea of being in love. So you worshipped love, you worshipped your desires. Very good. So you're a slave to those things. Is that good? Because if you love something now, tomorrow you might not love it, you might love something else. So you're going all over the place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ وَإِن تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. The example of him is like that of a dog. If you leave it, it's panting, it's just chasing things. And if you take care of it, it's still panting and chasing things. Some people are like this in their life. They're just, going from one desire to another. A'udhu billah. Anyways, he didn't like what I said. we had a discussion because it was like, yeah, but I worship my desires. So I said, in essence, when you worship your desires, you're a self-worshiper. You worship yourself because you are the only thing that matters, and you are the most important thing in the world, and you just worship whatever your body and your mind are telling you at the moment. And the thing is, that changes. How you were 10 years ago is different than who you are now. And it's going to be different 10 years from now as well. Which means it's unstable. You can't live your life like this. Okay. He left my office. 6 months later, or no, even almost a year later, because this was like right after Ramadan. The next Ramadan, we're praying Taraweeh in that masjid. This is back in Utah. And I see this guy come up to me and he looks familiar. He's like, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. I'm like, wa alaikum assalam. I'm sorry. He's like, you don't recognize me. I shaved my head. Now he came, because before he had a big hair, now gone. I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, you remember me? I'm so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, that name sounds familiar. He's like, man, I came and I wanted to marry Fatima. I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, what happened to you? He's like, I'm Muslim now. I was like, mashallah, congratulations. And he's like, yeah, and I left Fatima. She was fake. It's like, Allah, I laughed. I told him, that's good, yani, alhamdulillah. He's Muslim and he left Fatima. Khalas, alhamdulillah, that's good. Allah make him steadfast, inshallah ta'ala. Fatima guided somebody to Islam, but she needs guidance herself, apparently. May Allah guide her as well. طيب. The guy, alhamdulillah, now he realized. Now I don't know, I asked him, and he said, I met some other Muslims and I talked to them more and I thought about what you said and I studied Islam because I realized I didn't know anything about Islam. After studying and talking to those people, he eventually accepted Islam. Okay? The idea is, we have things that we rely on, but do we worship them? Okay? Things that we use in our lives, but do we worship them? Things that we things that we love, but do we elevate them to the status of worship? This is why being a proper abd of Allah entails that we love Allah more than anything else. Okay? Freedom means freedom from anything that deters you from Allah, truly. Freedom means being free from needing anything other than Allah. This is why if you think about it, the ability to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's freedom in being detached from anything other than Allah. If you have Allah and you lose everything, did you lose anything? If you have Allah and you lost everything, but you did not lose Allah, did you lose anything in reality? Can everything be replaced? The story of Ayyub alayhi salam is proof that everything can be replaced, and Allah can replace it. As long as you never lose the most important thing, which is your faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with you. That's just one example. And if you gain everything but you lost Allah, did you really gain anything? Are you taking it with you to the grave? Are you taking it with you to the hereafter? You're not taking a single thing except that which is based on your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even in memorizing the Quran, it was amazing. One of the scholars, he mentioned that even in memorizing the Quran, he said that I was detached from even having an object like a book that I needed. And I could refer to what I had memorized within my heart. So even memorizing the Quran gave him more freedom. Every act of worship gives you more freedom in reality than before. Knowledge gives you freedom from being attached to other people, from needing other people, from needing books. Okay? The acts of worship that we do, are they free? Do we need anything to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we have to pay a fee? Do we have to pay anything to pray? No. Do we have to go to a temple or a sacred place to pray? Are there religions where you can only worship in a temple? Yes. There are religions. Not Islam. Islam, you don't have to go to a temple. Can I pray anywhere? There's only a handful of places where you cannot pray. Right? Outside of this, you can literally pray anywhere. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, he says, جُعْلَتْ لِلْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا وَطَهُورًا. The ard, all of the earth has been made for me what? A masjid, a place of worship, and even a tahur, a place where I can purify myself. I don't even need water. I can do tayammum, which literally means a person can pray anywhere. People ask, Sheikh, I'm on my hospital bed, and I can't wash, I can't go to the sink, I'm bedridden, what do I do? There's no, and then they mention this doubt, this is a shubha. But there's no earth, there's no dirt for me to do tayammum. How do I pray? I said, who says that you need dirt? The purpose behind tayammum is that you can do it anywhere. You literally, on the sheet, whatever is on top of you, darba wahida. You actually do this, and you do the face, and then in the kaf. فَاضْرِبُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ مِنْهُ. Because the verse, it says, strike your face, and then أَيْدِيكُمْ, your hands. Some madhab say darba lil-kaf, one for each, and then one says just one, and then you're done. And I follow this one. One, and then your hands, you're done, you can pray. Why? Because you should be able to worship Allah anywhere, anytime. What about Ramadan? Can we do Ramadan? Anywhere on earth? Can I figure out Ramadan for myself? How? With the sun and the moon. I follow the moon. If I see the moon, khalas, I'll fast. Technically, I don't need to hear someone say it. Does that make sense? Muslims historically, when there was no method of communication, I just look up to the sky. Can I pray without having a calendar like this or an app on my phone to show me how to pray? I can. And we should, as Muslims, we should learn this. Can I even figure out the qibla without having my phone? I should. This entails proper freedom. When I truly understand the nature of the worship, Allah made worship easy so that you can do it anywhere, anytime. Free, worship is free. And in fact, it liberates you from attachments to anything else. These are some additional benefits of being a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're a proper slave of Allah, you expect a reward from Allah. And you also know that you'll be punished. Punishment and reward are, of course, consequences of our deeds. And so when I understand that I'm a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I understand that when I do good, obviously there's a reward. When I do bad, there's a punishment waiting for me. That idea also helps you stay in check, which means it helps you being regular. Being a proper slave of Allah means that I accept Allah's legislation and His destination. What does this mean? Not only do I accept, but I'm pleased with it. If I'm a proper slave of Allah, when Allah says do this, I do it. Don't do this, okay, I stay away. And when Allah decrees something to happen to you in your life, what do? Do you complain? Allah destines for you, you're going to go through 1, 2, and 3. If you're a proper slave of Allah, do you complain? If you complain, who do you complain to? Allah Himself. Does that make sense? Ash-shakwa lillah laysat bishakwa. Complaining to Allah in reality is actually not a complaint. It's a form of dua. When the prophets made dua, what did they say? Zakaria alayhi salam, we mentioned this last night. قَالَ رَبِّ إِنِّي وَهَنَ الْعَظْمُ مِنِّي وَاشْتَعَلَ الرَّأْسُ شَيْبًا. He's telling Allah that he's old, his hair's white, his bones are brittle, they're weak. What is he saying? In reality, is he complaining? But he's saying this to Allah. He's saying, Ya Allah, I'm old. You know my situation. This is what I'm going through. وَلَمْ أَكُمْ بِدُعَائِكَ رَبِّ شَقِيًّا. But I never stopped making dua to you. Is he complaining to his wife? Or even to his relative or to someone, a friend? No. This is why a proper way is to complain to Allah Himself alone, and He knows your situation. This is by being a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being consistent. There's no escape. When you're a slave, you're not a slave part-time or even full-time. You're a slave always of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? We'll stop here. There's 2 more slides, but we'll stop here inshaAllah ta'ala. And we'll talk about being a proper slave. Or do we have a few minutes still? Okay, we'll stop at 9:10. We'll stop at 9:10. We can make adhan and that will give us enough time, 5 minutes before the iqamah. Okay? Jazakumullah khairan. 3 more minutes. Being a proper slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being wholesome, which means it includes all parts of the individual. Which means our hearts need to be slaves of Allah. How does our heart become part of this servitude and slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshipping Allah? What are some of the deeds, the actions of the heart in Islam? When it beats? Okay, طيب. That's the physical heart, but I'm saying the spiritual heart. Love? How? لا هذا بالمال. الأصل طبعا بالقلب لكن هو حقيقة بالمال. بس he said love, الحب. نعم. قلبه معلق بالمساجد. His heart is attached to the masajid. The heart, what about khawf, fear? Khushu' is in the heart. What about ar-raja, hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's in the heart. Love is in the heart. Hate is also in the heart. I should love what Allah tells me to love and hate what Allah tells me to hate. حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانَ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُم. Right? Allah made Iman loved to you, beloved to you. وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمْ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانَ. And Allah made hated to you, look at this verse, kufr, disbelief, and fusuq, which is major sins, and isyan, which is minor sins. Allah made these things hated to us Do we dislike disbelief? We do. This doesn't mean we dislike disbelievers, because the disbeliever we should call to Islam and give da'wah. Okay? But he's saying the act of disbelief, that itself we dislike. Okay? Ikhlas, sincerity, honesty, sidq, al-amana. All of these are acts that are in the heart. Reliance, tawakkul ala Allah, relying upon Allah is an act in the heart. There's many. There's a book that's on A'mal al-Qalb, and he lists at least like 30. One of the authors, he did for his research paper. But anyways, what about the tongue of the believer? How does it be a servant of Allah? Part of the slave, the tongue, the eyes, the ears, the mouth, even the lips. There was one scholar who says the lips are also in servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is there an act of worship that you do with your lips? Ma huwa? Dhikr, what else? Da'wah, what else? Saying the lips. لا هذا باللسان. The tongue. Your wife, طيب. And what else? Your wife, yeah, if you do kiss her, you show her love and affection, that is an act of worship, that can be. What about the black stone? I kissed it, do I get good deeds? When I kiss my children, do I get good deeds? Yes. And imagine even in things like this, you get good deeds. صح? So every part of the believer, his feet. How do your feet are in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Walking to the masjid, doing tawaf, going to a good place. As-sa'yu fi hajat al-nas, walking to help people get their things done. Anyways, their time. Is there an act of worship that combines all of these? As-salah, correct. Perfect. All acts of worship are meant to make us better slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is salah. Salah is the act of worship that combines all of them. This is why salah actually is an embodiment of all pillars of Islam. After Salat al-Isha, inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about that. We'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. Does anybody have any questions? Or your questions can wait after Salah. Inshallah, barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallah wa hamdik, nashhadu an la nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.